Lisa had always imagined motherhood as a journey filled with love and joy, and for the most part, it was. As a single mother, she had dedicated every moment of her life to her 1-year-old son, Nathan. Their small apartment, though modest, was a haven of warmth and love. Every evening, she would cradle him in her arms, singing lullabies until his tiny eyelids fluttered shut. Nathan had always been a quiet, happy baby. He giggled at the simplest things, his mother's funny faces, the jingling of his toy keys, or the soft tickle of her fingers on his belly. But recently, something had changed. Every night, as soon as Lisa put him to bed and turned off the light, Nathan would let out a piercing cry. At first, she thought he was just having bad dreams. Babies had nightmares, didn't they? But this wasn't like anything she had experienced before. His cries weren't the usual whimpers of discomfort or hunger. They were filled with terror, raw, unrelenting fear. He would scream until his tiny body trembled, his chubby fists clenching the crib rails as though begging for help. Lisa tried everything, soothing him with lullabies, rocking him in her arms, even letting him sleep beside her. But nothing worked. As exhaustion set in, dark circles formed under her eyes, and worry gnawed at her heart. Something was wrong, something she couldn't understand, and she was determined to find out what. Every night, the pattern was the same. Lisa would tuck Nathan into his crib, stroke his soft curls, and whisper gentle reassurances before quietly slipping out of the room. But the moment she stepped past the doorway, his cries would erupt, high-pitched, desperate wails that made her chest tighten. It wasn't the usual fussing of a baby not wanting to be left alone. This was different. It was as if the second she left, something terrified him beyond reason. One night, determined to observe him without being noticed, Lisa cracked the door open just enough to peek inside. What she saw sent a shiver down her spine. Nathan wasn't just crying, he was staring. His wide, tear-filled eyes were locked onto a specific corner of the room. He wasn't looking around aimlessly like babies often did. His gaze was focused, unmoving, fixed on something Lisa couldn't see. The air in the room suddenly felt colder, heavier. Lisa hesitated before stepping back in. "Baby, what is it?" she whispered, scooping him up. His little arms clung to her like a lifeline, his sobs muffled against her shoulder. But even as she held him, she could feel it. He was still looking over her shoulder at that same corner. She turned sharply, but there was nothing there. Just the darkened outline of the room, the shadows cast by the dim glow of his nightlight. Lisa tried to shake off the unease, telling herself it was just a trick of the light, a random fixation common in babies. But as the nights went on, Nathan's behavior remained the same. He wasn't just crying, he was afraid of something. And Lisa was starting to feel afraid too. Desperate for answers, Lisa took Nathan to the pediatrician the next morning. She explained everything, the nightly crying, the way he fixated on the same corner of the room, and how he clung to her as if something was terrifying him when she left. Dr. Patel, a warm and experienced doctor, examined Nathan thoroughly, checking his ears, throat, and even running a few tests to rule out any underlying issues. After a long pause, she finally looked at Lisa and smiled gently. "He's perfectly healthy," she assured. "Babies go through phases of separation anxiety. It's common at this age. Try to comfort him, but don't be too alarmed. He'll grow out of it." Lisa wanted to believe that. She really did. But this didn't feel like a phase. It felt like something else entirely. Still, she tried everything the doctor suggested. She replaced Nathan's bedding, thinking maybe he was allergic to the fabric. She adjusted the room's temperature, making sure it wasn't too hot or too cold. She even left a dim light on at night in case he was afraid of the dark. But nothing changed. Every night, the second she stepped out of the room, his terrified screams filled the apartment. Exhaustion was catching up to her. She confided in her friend Mia, who listened intently before offering a hesitant suggestion. "Lisa, what if there's something else going on?" Mia's voice lowered slightly, as if afraid of saying it out loud. "You know, like, maybe something spiritual?" Lisa rolled her eyes. "You mean like a ghost?" "I don't know," Mia admitted. "But if Nathan keeps staring at that same spot, maybe there's something there that you can't see." Lisa scoffed. She wasn't superstitious. She didn't believe in spirits, hauntings, or any of that nonsense. Still, another friend, Daniel, suggested looking into the history of the apartment. Maybe something happened in that room before you moved in, he said. You never know. Lisa dismissed both ideas. She wasn't about to call a priest or dig through old property records, but something inside her refused to let go of the feeling that this wasn't normal. That night, as she rocked Nathan in her arms, his tiny fingers curled into her shirt, she made a decision. If there was something happening in that room, if there was something she was missing, she needed proof. She would set up a hidden camera and record everything that happened after she left the room. Whatever was making Nathan cry every night, she was going to find out. That night, after putting Nathan to sleep, Lisa took a deep breath and carefully positioned a small hidden camera in the top corner of the room. It was angled perfectly to capture every inch of the crib, the doorway, and most importantly, the mysterious corner where Nathan always stared. She double-checked the settings, ensuring the night vision mode was activated. With a final glance at her son, who was already shifting restlessly in his sleep, she whispered, "It's okay, baby. Mommy's right here." Then she turned off the lights and left the room. The moment the door clicked shut behind her, Nathan's wails erupted into the silence. His tiny voice was raw with terror, piercing through the apartment like a siren. Lisa's heart clenched, but she forced herself to wait. She wanted nothing more than to rush back in, scoop him up, and comfort him. But she needed to know what was happening. This was her only chance to get real answers. Minutes passed, each one agonizingly slow. Finally, when she couldn't take it any longer, she rushed back inside, flipping on the lights. Nathan was standing in his crib, tears streaming down his flushed cheeks, his little hands gripping the crib rails so tightly his knuckles turned white. She held him, whispering soothing words, rocking him back and forth until his sobs became soft whimpers and he finally drifted off in her arms. Lisa barely slept that night. As soon as the sun began to rise, she grabbed her phone and opened the camera footage from the night before. With trembling hands, she hit play. What she saw made her blood run cold. Lisa sat on the couch, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the night vision footage. At first, everything seemed normal. Nathan was sleeping soundly, curled up with his stuffed bear. The crib bars cast soft shadows against the wall, and the faint glow of the nightlight gave the room an eerie calm. For the first few hours, nothing happened. Lisa exhaled, feeling a little silly. Maybe this had all been in her head. Maybe the doctor was right, just a phase. But then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the atmosphere in the room changed. Nathan, who had been sleeping peacefully, suddenly sat upright in his crib. His tiny chest rose and fell quickly as if he had been startled awake. Lisa frowned, leaning closer to the screen. Nathan's head turned, slowly, deliberately, toward the same corner of the room. The corner near the closet. Her pulse quickened. For a long moment, he didn't move. He just stared. And then, a shadow moved. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't big, just a flicker, a barely perceptible shift in darkness, like something had passed quickly in front of the camera. Her rational mind screamed that it was just a trick of the light, a glitch in the footage, but her instincts told her otherwise. Nathan's reaction made it clear. He had seen it too. His mouth opened in a silent scream before he let out a piercing wail, his hands gripping the crib rails so tightly his fingers curled in terror. Lisa's skin prickled, and then something even more chilling happened. For a split second, in the grainy night vision recording, two tiny glowing orbs appeared near the closet. Eyes. Lisa's breath came in shallow gasps. She couldn't move. Nathan was crying in the footage, reaching his arms out, not toward the door, but toward the closet. Lisa slammed her laptop shut, her heart pounding in her ears. This wasn't her imagination. Something was in that room. Lisa couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled deep in her chest. The footage had rattled her more than she wanted to admit. Something had been in that room. Something that Nathan could see, but she couldn't. That night, she took extra precautions. She locked the bedroom door, double-checked the windows, and even placed a heavy chair against the closet, as if that could keep whatever it was from getting out. Still, none of it mattered. The moment she stepped out of the room, Nathan's wailing filled the apartment once more. It was relentless, not just crying but full-blown screaming, the kind that made Lisa's heart ache with helplessness. She had never heard her son sound so scared, so desperate. When she finally gave in and rushed back inside, she found him exactly as before, standing in his crib, eyes locked onto the corner by the closet, his tiny body shaking. Lisa scooped him up, whispering soothing words, but his tear-streaked face turned toward the closet, not toward her. A shiver crawled down her spine. She tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a shadow, a trick of the light. Maybe his imagination was running wild. But deep down, a terrifying thought crept into her mind. This wasn't just separation anxiety. Something was in that room. And the worst part? Lisa didn't know if it was a spirit, a ghost, or something much worse. The next morning, Lisa woke up with a single thought. She needed answers. She couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. The footage, Nathan's reaction, the eerie feeling in the room, it all pointed to something being wrong with this apartment. So she started digging. Her first call was to Mr. Thompson, the landlord. He was an older man, friendly enough, but not particularly chatty. When Lisa asked if anything unusual had ever happened in the apartment, his response was immediate. "No, not at all," he said, sounding almost amused. "I've rented that unit to several families over the years. Never had a single complaint, except maybe for the plumbing once or twice." Lisa pressed further. "Has anyone ever reported strange noises? Odd experiences? Anything at all?" A chuckle. "Are you asking if your apartment is haunted?" Lisa hesitated before answering. "I just need to know if anyone has ever felt uncomfortable in that room." But there was nothing. No reports of deaths, no tragic accidents, not even a history of strange occurrences. Just a normal apartment, at least according to the landlord. Frustrated, Lisa turned to the previous tenants. She managed to track down a woman named Emily, who had lived in the unit 2 years before. Emily was polite but confused by Lisa's questions. "We lived there for 3 years," she said. "It was fine. A little small, but nothing strange happened. Honestly, we loved that apartment." Lisa's stomach tightened. How was that possible? If there was nothing wrong with the apartment, then why was Nathan so terrified every night? The lack of answers only made her fear grow stronger. Because if it wasn't the apartment, then what was it? Frustrated by the lack of answers from the landlord and previous tenants, Lisa turned back to the only piece of evidence she had, the camera footage. She rewatched it, forcing herself to focus on every small detail. The moment at 2:13 a.m. played out the same way. Nathan sat up, stared into the darkness, and then the shadow moved. But something felt off. Lisa rewound the video, slowing it down frame by frame. Her pulse quickened as she analyzed the shadow. It wasn't moving the way she had originally thought. It didn't glide across the room or change shape like a presence lurking in the dark. Instead, it appeared all at once, sudden and sharp, like a reflection. Lisa's breath caught in her throat. Reflection from what? She replayed the clip again, shifting her focus. Nathan's terrified gaze wasn't just staring at the closet. His eyes were fixed slightly to the left of it, on the wall. Lisa's stomach twisted as she slowly turned her own gaze toward that same wall in real life. And then she saw it. A framed photo hung there. A single black and white picture. One she had placed in Nathan's room months ago but had barely thought about since. It was a photo of her husband, Nathan's father, the man he had never met. Lisa's knees went weak. The realization hit her like a punch to the chest. The shadow in the video? It wasn't something moving in the room. It was a reflection of the framed photo of her late husband. Nathan wasn't staring at a ghost. He was staring at his father. And worse, he was crying because he recognized something that Lisa had never told him about. Lisa sat frozen, staring at the framed photo as realization sank in. Nathan wasn't crying because he was afraid. He was crying because he was grieving. A deep, aching sorrow welled up inside Lisa as she watched the footage again, this time with new eyes. Nathan's cries had never been screams of terror. They were wails of longing. The way he reached toward the crib rails, his desperate little hands stretching forward, he wasn't trying to escape. He was reaching for someone who wasn't there. Tears burned in Lisa's eyes. Nathan had never met his father. Her husband, James, had passed away before Nathan was born, taken too soon by a tragic accident. Lisa had never spoken about him to Nathan. How could she? He was too young to understand. She thought she had time. Time to tell him, time to explain, time to fill in the empty space that James had left behind. But maybe Nathan already felt it. Maybe babies understood more than adults gave them credit for. Nathan didn't have memories of his father, but he had a missing piece in his heart, a void that somehow he knew should have been filled. And every night when Lisa left him alone in that room, he saw the picture on the wall and he felt that absence, the cries, the desperation. Nathan wasn't afraid of a ghost. He was mourning someone he had never even met. Lisa wiped away the tears that had been steadily streaming down her face. How could she have not realized it sooner? Nathan wasn't scared. He was grieving. And he had been grieving alone, without even understanding why. Now, she had to do something about it. She couldn't bring James back, but she could help Nathan feel closer to his father. That night, after putting Nathan to sleep, Lisa pulled out an old external hard drive, one she hadn't touched in years. It was filled with home videos, recordings, and voicemails from James. Her hands trembled as she clicked through the files. His voice. It had been so long since she had heard it. "Hey baby, just checking in. Hope you and our little peanut are doing okay. I love you, Lisa. I can't wait to meet our son. Can you believe it? We're gonna be parents." Lisa covered her mouth as a sob escaped her. James had been so excited to be a father, but he never got the chance. She found an old video, a grainy clip taken in their living room. James was talking to her belly, grinning like an idiot. "Hey, little guy, it's your dad. I can't wait to hold you, teach you how to ride a bike, and tell you all the bad dad jokes your mom hates." Press play again and again, listening to the voice Nathan had never heard, but somehow still missed. And then an idea struck her. If Nathan longed for his father's presence, maybe hearing his voice would help. She picked up her phone, ready to give her son the piece of his father he had been missing. The next morning, Lisa woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She had to help Nathan feel close to his father, even if James was no longer here. She spent the day searching for something special, a way to bring James's voice back into Nathan's life. After hours of browsing online, she finally found the perfect solution, a recordable teddy bear. It was a soft, plush bear with a hidden compartment that could store a small voice recorder. With just a press of its paw, it could play any message Lisa chose. She ordered it immediately. When the package arrived, she wasted no time. She carefully inserted the tiny recorder inside the bear's chest and uploaded the audio file she had chosen from James's old recordings. It was a simple message, one that made Lisa's heart ache and heal at the same time. "Hey, little guy. It's your dad. I love you so much. I wish I could be there to hold you, but know that I'm always with you, okay?" As she pressed the button and the bear spoke, Lisa felt tears slip down her cheeks. She knew that Nathan wouldn't understand the words just yet, but he would feel it. The warmth, the love, the presence of the father he never met but always missed. That night, when it was time for bed, Lisa placed the teddy bear in Nathan's crib. "Look, sweetheart," she whispered, sitting beside him. "This is a special bear. When you hug him, he'll tell you something important." Nathan, still clutching his blanket, hesitantly reached for the bear. His tiny fingers pressed the soft paw, and then James's voice filled the room. "Hey, little guy, it's your dad. I love you so much." Nathan's eyes widened. His little mouth formed an O of surprise. Then something incredible happened. For the first time in weeks, he didn't cry. Instead, he let out a tiny, soft giggle. Lisa held her breath as she watched him hug the bear tightly, his small body curling around it. That night, for the first time since it all began, Nathan slept peacefully. That night, as Lisa watched Nathan cuddle the teddy bear, a miracle happened. For the first time in weeks, he didn't cry. There was no terrified wailing, no desperate reaching toward the crib rails, no fearful glances toward the dark corner of the room. Instead, Nathan lay still, hugging the bear to his tiny chest. His eyes fluttered sleepily as he pressed the button again, letting his father's voice fill the room once more. "Hey, little guy, it's your dad. I love you so much." Lisa held her breath, watching every little movement, waiting for the moment when his usual cries would break the silence. But they never came. Instead, Nathan let out a soft sigh, his little fingers clutching the bear's fur. Within minutes, his breathing slowed, his body relaxed, and he drifted off into the most peaceful sleep Lisa had seen in weeks. Lisa's hands trembled as she covered her mouth, her heart swelling with relief, with love, with something she hadn't felt in so long, hope. She stepped out of the room, leaving the door slightly ajar, and sat down on the couch. The overwhelming emotions she had been holding back finally broke free. Tears streamed down her face, not out of fear or exhaustion this time, but out of pure, unfiltered happiness. James was gone, but his love wasn't. Somehow, in ways she would never fully understand, his presence had reached their son. Lisa wiped her tears, looking back toward the bedroom. Nathan was no longer afraid, and for the first time in a long time, neither was she. From that night onward, everything changed. Nathan no longer woke up screaming. There were no more terrified wails, no desperate cries for Lisa to come back. Instead, every night he curled up in his crib, his little arms wrapped tightly around the teddy bear, his father's voice soothing him until sleep claimed him. Lisa watched in quiet amazement as her son transformed before her eyes. The once restless, fearful baby now slept soundly, his tiny face peaceful in the glow of the nightlight. It was as if the missing piece of his heart had finally been filled. Every night before bed, Nathan pressed the bear's paw, and James's voice echoed softly in the room. "Hey, little guy. It's your dad. I love you so much." Each time, Nathan would giggle softly, as if recognizing the voice, as if knowing deep inside that he was loved by someone he had never met, but had always been with him. Lisa no longer locked the bedroom door in fear. She no longer dreaded nighttime. Instead, she found herself sitting beside the crib after Nathan had fallen asleep, gently stroking his soft curls, whispering words she wished James could hear. "He's okay now. We're okay." The apartment, once filled with tension and sleepless nights, now held a warmth Lisa hadn't felt in a long time. Nathan had found his peace, and in doing so, Lisa found hers too. Her heart ached for James. It always would. But for the first time since his passing, she realized something beautiful. Love doesn't fade with time. It doesn't disappear with death. It stays. It lingers. It finds a way to be felt, even across the veil of life and loss. Nathan would never know his father in the way she wished he could, but he would always feel him. And that, Lisa knew, was enough. That evening, after Nathan had fallen into a peaceful sleep with the teddy bear tucked securely in his arms, Lisa sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at a blank sheet of paper. For the first time in a long while, she felt the weight of unspoken words pressing against her chest. There was so much she had never said, so much she had buried deep inside. With a shaky breath, she picked up her pen and began to write. "My love, it's been so long since I've written to you. Maybe it's foolish, maybe it's pointless, but tonight I feel like I need to do this. Nathan, our son? He feels you, James. I know it sounds strange, but it's the truth. For weeks, he cried every night, and I thought he was afraid of something unseen. But now, I realize it was never fear, it was longing. He missed you. He doesn't even know what missing someone means yet, but somehow he felt your absence, and it broke him. It broke me. I didn't know how to comfort him because I didn't realize what he needed. But now, every night, he holds that teddy bear, the one that carries your voice. And James, he smiles. He laughs when he hears you. He knows you love him, even if he's never met you. I used to think that death was the end, that when you were gone, you were just gone, but I was wrong. You're still here, in the way Nathan looks toward that framed photo of you, in the way he clutches that bear like it's the most precious thing in the world, in the way I still talk to you in the quiet moments, hoping somehow, somewhere, you can hear me. I don't know if you ever see us or if you're watching over him, but I do know this. Our son will grow up knowing his father loved him. And for that, I will always be grateful. I love you. Lisa." Tears blurred Lisa's vision as she folded the letter and placed it gently beside Nathan's teddy bear, resting it against the soft fabric as if it were a bridge between two worlds. She sat there for a long moment just watching her son sleep. And in that stillness, she felt something, an unspoken presence, a quiet warmth. Maybe it was just her imagination. Or maybe, just maybe, James had gotten her message. That morning, the world felt lighter. Sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a golden glow across the room. The quiet hum of a new day filled the air, carrying with it a sense of peace Lisa hadn't felt in a long time. As she stretched, still groggy from sleep, tiny footsteps padded across the floor. Then, before she could react, Nathan crashed into her arms, his little hands gripping her shirt, his face beaming with pure joy. "Mama!" he giggled, his voice filled with the innocence of childhood. Lisa laughed, pressing a kiss to the top of his soft curls. "Good morning, my love." But then, he did something that made her heart stop. Nathan pulled back slightly, clutching his teddy bear tightly against his chest. He grinned up at her, eyes bright, and in a small, whispered voice, he said, "Papa." Lisa's breath hitched. Tears pricked her eyes as she hugged him close, her heart swelling with something beyond words. Because in that moment, she knew. James was still here. Love had never left them. It had only changed form. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales of loyalty, love, and the incredible bonds between humans and animals. Join us as we share stories that remind us of what truly matters in life. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a moment.